Good people, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Desmond. Welcome to another edition of the All Gold Podcast. It's been a while. I am working on putting together a schedule on when I am putting some content out. So stay tuned. I believe Thursdays may work for me, but we'll see. Anyway, got a couple topics I want to get into. Number one is definitely the Super Bowl. Number two, Central Florida UCF just hired Gus Malzahn, who was the former Auburn head football coach. He's now going to Central Florida, and wanted to dabble into the UConn women's basketball for a little bit. So with the Super Bowl, that was I'm about 2-3 weeks late, so forgive me, but it was just pure domination by Tampa Bay. They had to start with them defensively. They had a game plan that was just solid. And the guys executed it so well. It looked like in general that they were playing a Tampa 2 defense, to where it's a cover 2 where essentially your middle linebacker is kind of playing that deep third in the middle, but they did it in a lot of different ways as well. I am a subscriber, and I keep watch the QB School here on YouTube, which is a phenomenal channel with JT O'Sullivan, but he showed a lot of different looks that Tampa Bay gave, that even him as I believe a 10-plus year veteran in the NFL, played on multiple different teams, things he's never seen before. And when you have played enough football as he has and watched enough football as he has, it's clear that if there are looks that he's never seen, that Patrick Mahomes has never seen them either. So they just did a phenomenal job. Just let their guys go run, play, and they got after Mahomes a lot. I've seen multiple stats that Mahomes ran around for 500 or just under 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage before he threw the ball, scrambling, which I definitely believe that because he was running around a lot. But it just, when you put it together of a defense playing that dominant, and then Patrick Mahomes was missing throws that he traditionally would hit, and also his guys, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, dropping passes that they typically would catch, and then also you don't have a run game, like those things together is going to give you 9 points. That's what it'll give you. So it just was a very dominant performance by Tampa. And then to flip it offensively for Tampa Bay, they ran the ball well. And once you do that, that changes the game with play action. Brady was extremely efficient in the game. I think he may have missed 7 passes all the entire game. And they were, offensively, Byron Leftwich was phenomenal, as well as Bruce Arians, the head coach. And defensively, Todd Bowles was phenomenal. Kansas City could not get any pressure on Tom Brady. They did get the penalties. It killed them. And the unfortunate part is, you don't like to see a game that has as many flags thrown on one side of the ball as we had in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs defense. But every time the flag was thrown, that was legitimately a penalty. Like, it wasn't. There was maybe one, and I think it was actually the Tyrann Mathieu interception that was called back. That was one that you could have said that maybe that was it could have been close, gone either way. All the other ones, you were holding him, you were grabbing a guy, you were that was pass interference. Like, so it's so difficult to be upset at the referees when they just made calls that were there. Like, as a fan of football as I am, I don't enjoy seeing flags being thrown, but once they, replay the penalty and they spotlight the guy, I'm like, well, that was holding. Well, that's pass interference. Well, that's, it's difficult. I'm not quite sure what what you want the referees to do. Don't commit the penalties. That's the easy way to not get a flag thrown on you. Don't commit the penalty. So kudos to Tampa Bay. They did a phenomenal job. Tom Brady wins ring number 7. And it sounds like they are looking to run it back, and for him try to get an 8th, and for Tampa Bay try to go back to back. So we'll see what happens. It is pretty interesting. I mean, I know they have a lot of guys coming up for free agency, but if you can, keep the core group together and you can bring a lot of those guys back, then, they definitely have a shot. Because you look at, the Saints, who are probably the next closest team in their division to them. The Saints won the division, but Tampa Bay ended up beating them in the playoffs. But the Saints were probably the next closest team when it comes to talent, and their starting quarterback is retiring, looks like. So Tampa's got a pretty good shot, and this time maybe they'll get everything played at home except for the Super Bowl, which would be kind of interesting. But we'll see what happens. The Gus bus is heading down to Florida. So Gus Malzahn, as you may or may not know, was fired from Auburn. He has just taken the head coaching job at University of Central Florida, UCF, down in Orlando. As you know, UCF was, I want to say, they have a self-proclaimed 2017, I think, national championship. They were undefeated, never lost a game. They did not get a chance to get to the playoff. So they have claimed their own national title. So is what it is. I'm not bothered either way about it. Feel free. But as far as the hire, I actually think this is a phenomenal hire. We just saw Josh Heupel, who was the UCF head football coach, get hired at Tennessee, and now we see Auburn coach go down to Central Florida. I think UCF did a better job hiring Gus Malzahn than even Tennessee did with hiring Heupel, because to me, for Gus Malzahn to have to play Alabama every single year in the midst of their dynasty, that's a difficult task. That's an extremely difficult task. And when you look at it, I actually looked up the stats on it, which was pretty crazy to see. But Gus Malzahn, any year that Auburn has had 8 wins or more, they've beaten Alabama that season. So Nick Saban has yet to beat an Auburn team that finished with 8 wins or more. And it's crazy to think, because when you think of Nick Saban, you think obviously the Alabama dominance and, winning multiple national championships. He's in the midst of a monster run, and Gus Malzahn had to play him every single year. And he held his own. I mean, there were, yes, times where it was a lopsided loss, but Gus also had, some teams that beat a number 1 Alabama team, that beat a team in Alabama that was heading to the, national championship or playoffs or, things like that. Like, he had a very difficult task, and, every year it seemed as if Auburn was ready for the task. Now, they may not have played well, and, there's a multitude of factors that go into that, including the type of roster that you have. Like, you're not always going to have a roster that can go toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the country. Like, it's just not. Like, so for him to even despite that, continue to have a team that can give Alabama fits, and to have a team that can put a good product on the field, I think they're going to do a very good job in UCF. Gus's offense, they run the sugar huddle to where, guys are in like a huddle, but not the traditional 8 to 10 yards back. They're at like 4 yards. They break it quick, snap the ball quick. They run a lot of tempo, a lot of buck sweep, a lot of play action over the top. And I just think in that conference, with UCF already being a better team and arguably the best team in that conference, to team it up with an offense like what Gus Malzahn runs, I think I think it's going to be dangerous. I believe in the next couple years too, UCF has got some pretty big out-of-conference games to where they're playing Power 5 teams in their out-of-conference, which that is going to be the way that they are going to get into the college football playoff. If they do, is you've got to play the Power 5 teams in your out-of-conference in order to get that strength of schedule. So if you do go undefeated, you give yourself a shot to get there. So we'll see what happens, but I think this is a grand slam, and not just a home run. I think it's a grand slam hire. I think it'll be really good for Gus Malzahn. he's had a tough go of it at Auburn. In general, it seemed as if every year he was on the hot seat, no matter how things went. And it just, to me, seemed silly because I outside of a couple years, I don't feel like Auburn underperformed all that much. Now, last year with COVID and things like that, it did kind of go off the rails a little bit. But overall, I think he's a really good coach. He's won and been successful pretty much everywhere he's been. So I don't think UCF will be any different. It's a school that is dedicated to football. They have no problems putting money into their facility, paying their coaches, different things like that. The things that you need to win and attract high-level talent, they do those things. So pretty excited to see what happens there at UCF. And as an Alabama fan, I'm not upset to see Gus Malzahn go. I'm really not. So I definitely wish the best for him too. So we will see what happens at UCF with Gus Malzahn. Last thing is the UConn women's basketball. I actually watched late game against it was UConn versus South Carolina, which probably the two best head coaches in women's college basketball with Dawn Staley as well as Gino. But it was a pretty incredible game, and UConn has a freshman, which it seems as if every year we say UConn has a freshman who's out of this world, but Paige, and I don't know her last name, but I've actually seen her on like YouTube and things like that last year when she was a senior in high school, and she's got some swag to her, but she can ball, and I believe she's had like 6 or 7 30-point games in a row, and she is the first freshman at UConn to do that, which when you think of the young ladies who have, the players who have come out of UConn's women's basketball program, and none of them have done this, that you think that bar is set incredibly high. Someone I think about is a Breanna Stewart in regards to what she did there as coming in as a true freshman, and I believe they won 4 in a row. And I mean, honestly, that's how I foresee Paige carrying this program in the next 4 years. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on the Huskies and just see how they finish out the season. I think it's pretty early, but nonetheless, definitely going to keep an eye on them. And to South Carolina, like I said, Coach Staley's done a phenomenal job with that program, building it and getting them to where they're at. So I believe that was a 1 versus 2 matchup. UConn was ranked number 2 and South Carolina number 1. So these teams, I think they know that they're going to meet each other, especially when it comes to the tournament and probably either Final Four or National Championship. It'd be pretty cool to watch them play each other in the National Championship. You always like to see the best 2 teams, and I think at the end of the season, they'll be the best 2 teams, and they will be the 2 that are playing for it. So we'll see what happens there. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging out till the end. Please like and subscribe, and you can also follow me on Twitter at AllGoPodcast, the number 1. Once again, I'm Desmond. Thanks so much for joining me.